I don't need help crossing the street, but I do need a little help if I'm going to stand in the pulpit. Thank you for the box to sit on. A Presbyterian church in the East Bay called a clergywoman from another state to be their associate pastor. She was greeting people during the coffee hour and welcomed a young couple she had not seen before. Using a device to open conversation, she said to him, "And what do you do?" And when Stephen Curry answered, "I play basketball," she replied, "Oh," completely befuddled, until someone standing nearby stepped in and explained to her. Now imagine how much more befuddled this pastor might have been if she had first asked Alicia Curry, "What do you do?" Only then learning that her young, healthy-looking husband just played basketball. Well, if you are not a sports fan, and especially if you are new to the Bay Area, you might have been befuddled too. It's very hard to make sense of something which is outside of your experience, your familiar frame of reference. Which brings us to the event recorded in today's gospel reading. You could be just cynical, of course, and wonder what desert plants they had ingested. Or you might even just ask, how did they know it was Moses and Elijah? I mean, did one of them look like Charlton Heston? See, some of you are befuddled by that. Charlie who? Myself, I believe that God comes to us, God communicates with us in ways that we might understand if only we are ready to understand, and that she has always done so. The transfiguration of Christ is not the first such event recorded in the gospel. Moses came down from the mountain after communing with God, and it was said that he had such a radiance it was impossible to look into his face. Elijah boldly challenged the secular and religious powers that be, and then had to run for his life. He sat in front of a cave all alone, feeling sorry for himself, until God spoke directly to him, "Get over it. There is work to be done. Get up and get going." Elisha, a disciple of Elijah, saw his mentor taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. Wow, and there are many others. The crucial question to ask of this event is, what does it mean for us? Moses represents law. Law as given, for example, in the Ten Commandments, which must be taken as a whole, a guide, a framework for living together harmoniously. We are all flawed. We are all sinful, and we need law to guide and sometimes to restrain us. Law as discipline for freedom in working together for the common good. Not all law is rooted in this basic principle. Dr. King harked back to Thomas Aquinas when he wrote from a Birmingham jail, "Any law that uplifts humans is just. Any law that degrades is unjust. And an unjust law is no law at all, but a species of violence." We are called by God to change unjust laws, replacing them with laws rooted in God's intention for us to live together in harmony, peace, mutual respect, and caring. Elijah represents the prophets. The prophets are the ones who bring the word of God to bear on today's society and laws, as Elijah did in his own time. Jesus represents God's inclusive love for all people and all creation. Now, the 3 disciples of Jesus who were taken up to the mountain had never seen such a vision. They were terrified, of course. They were befuddled. And as usual, Peter just blurted out something. I love Peter. He was the Draymond Green of the 12 disciples. Both Peter and Draymond needed discipline. Discipline so that their admirable passion might better be channeled into powerful, purposeful action. Jesus let Peter know gently that he had missed the point. The vision of God does not freeze us into a mysterious, magical moment, and it is not something to be grasped and held on to. It always impels us into action toward becoming God's healers. And when Jesus and the 3 returned to the other disciples, they found them befuddled, unable to bring about healing for a boy who was possessed by something that caused him to injure himself. And Jesus told them this kind only yields to much prayer and fasting, chiding them for lacking that discipline which channels passion, good intentions, into powerful, purposeful action. Discipline yields freedom. 20 years ago, Network Ministries opened the Safe House for homeless women escaping prostitution. And during this past Christmas time, many Safe House graduates emailed, called, sent cards saying, "Thanks to Safe House, I have now been clean and sober for many years. I have a good job and I am a good mother." One of those women who sent in a word about herself was Melanie, a woman we had all loved so much, a sweet woman. She relapsed twice, and we took her back both times, but the third time that she had a major, rather explosive psychotic break on a Muni bus, and she was mandated into a mental health program. Thank God there was one available for her. The therapist who had worked with her said, "You know, I can't tell you anything, but I will say this, dark things were done to her." Now, she is a peer counselor, operating from an office on Market Street, reaching out and supporting and helping to heal other women who were trapped in the same way that she had been, a miracle. And she said, "I want to give back." So many Safe House women have echoed that, "I want to give back." All of them came to Safe House from years of abuse and trauma. For many of them, this dated back into childhood. They came from years of life on the street and in addiction, which wounds body and soul. They came undertaking a discipline of therapy, education, money management, and much more, a discipline yielding the freedom to transform their lives. Perhaps the most difficult discipline for many of them, as it is truly for most of us, is coming to believe their worth and beauty as God's beloved daughters. The discipline of opening up and being filled with God's inclusive love is lifelong and transformative. Discipline yields freedom. How does Steph Curry make those impossible shots? Very few undertake these kinds of discipline, but we are all called to the discipline of prayer. Regular communal prayer when you feel like it, but especially when you don't. Learning from and rejoicing with each other, buoying each other up in the hard times, being held up by the faith of others when my own faith is flagging. Disciplined individual prayer, conversation of the heart from which nothing need be excluded, prayer in which I might see something new. Prayer as mindful meditation, not so much a seeing as seeing something new, as a new way of seeing. Prayer as contemplation, not a seeing, but a naked moment of being seen by the Holy One. Contemplation, a breathtaking gift from God, rarely given, never to be grasped, but always to be obeyed, not knowing where that might take you. Prayer as disciplined mindfulness, openness, attentiveness to the person, the creature, the forest, waters, air, and earth. Mindfulness, perhaps issuing in the freedom to see, as Merton did, that every flower by the side of the road is like a little saint with face turned to God. This discipline is not for personal aggrandizement. Rather, it will challenge and keep on challenging us, changing us as a community of believers and as individual faithful disciples, shaping us into instruments for God's healing for this hurting world. Unjust laws are pounding down on us just now like a mammoth hailstorm. Are you befuddled about how to challenge and defeat them, how to change them into just laws? Find an organization you trust, the church. For me also, the Older Women's League, but there are many, which support disciplined action to stop the violence of unjust laws. Serving God and country means establishing just laws and defeating unjust laws which do violence to the most vulnerable among us. For example, Paul Ryan now has a proposal before Congress which is inaptly called the Welfare Reform Act. This is a law which would wreak violence on the old, the ill, and especially the poor. It would slash aid for home heating, forcing people to choose between heating their homes during ferocious winter storms or buying food or medicine. It would make major cutbacks in Head Start programs for our most needy children. It would impose a lifetime cap on Medicaid. If you're unsure of what Medicaid provides, make a note to yourself to go home and look it up on your computer. And when you have seen this, rally your friends across the country to pressure their senators and their congresspeople to defeat this unjust law. It is in this way that we all become God's prophets, bringing the word of God to bear on today's society and today's laws. This, I forgot to tell you, this proposed unjust law would also slash those programs which help those among us, and there are millions who are hungry. And it would cut back programs like Meals on Wheels. This is an unjust law, and it must be defeated. And we are the prophetic ones who can see that that happens. Now, at the end of this sermon, I hope I won't lose too many of you, with a final passionate plea. Please stay mindfully open. The single most impactful action you can take, any one of us can take every day to protect God's beautiful creation and those who are living in poverty. The single most impactful action we can take daily is to move from an animal-based to a plant-based diet. Don't go away now. In the United States alone, every year, think of this, 8.6 billion chickens, 244 million turkeys, 118 million pigs, and 28.7 million cows are raised in suffering and cruelly slaughtered. Talk about violence. Well, now, why should we focus on this? Some people say when there are so many human concerns. This is a human concern. People around the world are suffering the effects of drastic climate change, famine, floods, drought, poverty. Even as the methane gas emitted by these animals who are raised so that we may eat their flesh, the methane gas is yielding 21 times the destructive power of carbon dioxide. Think of that. And mammoth amounts of water and fossil fuel are expended in order to bring their flesh to our table. Don't take my word for this. Go home, look it up, research it for yourself, animal-based versus plant-based diets. Now, in case you are worried that changing your diet like this might somehow drain your energy or something, then think about JaVale McGee. Most of y'all know who JaVale McGee is. It was thought that his career in basketball was over. And then he became a vegan. He gained control of his weight. He lost 25 pounds. He says he has more energy than ever. And what fun it is to watch him swatting down shots or throwing down those exciting alley-oops. Isn't that great? And you should know that recently 10 NFL players announced that they have adopted a plant-based diet with the same results. And so, as we enter the season of Lent, I invite you to begin practicing a dietary discipline which leads to freedom from supporting this systematic violence and suffering. Don't do this as giving up, but prayerfully as giving back. Law, prophecy, gospel. These are God's gifts to us for channeling her passion through us into powerful, purposeful action for healing her beloved world. Thanks be to God.